Imina 37 na Legislature in Guam is called to order. We are back in Committee of the Whole for the State Funeral. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole.
On the motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion passes.
Madam Speaker, I also move to append resolution number 96-37LS, which was the...
We have to go to motions first.
Okay, understood. So, Madam Speaker, I move that we go back to motions.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're back in motions. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to append resolution number 96-37LS to the April 26, 2023 session journal. This is the resolution we read yesterday in session in honor of the late Senator Benigno Palomo.
On the motion to append resolution number 96-37 to the session journal, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Are there any other motions? Senator Shelton, if you could.
We are in motions, colleagues. Speaker Terlahi, you are recognized.
Venice and Hafa Day, and good morning to my colleagues and to the people of Guam. I'd like to make a motion. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the objections of Imagahagan Guahan, I move to place vetoed bill number 12-37 COR in the voting file for an override. Bill number 12 COR, as amended on the floor, is an act to amend section 60112 of chapter 60, title 21, Guam Code annotated. I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, my podium is falling down. Can I just
Okay, we'll take
restart?
a moment's recess. Speaker Terlahi, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those who helped fix this. This is the second time it started to fall, so again, so Madam Speaker and colleagues, notwithstanding the objections of Imagahagan Guahan, I move to place vetoed bill number 12-37 COR in the voting file for an override. Bill number 12 COR, as amended on the floor, is an act to amend section 60112 of chapter 60, title 21, Guam Code annotated, relative to requiring a prior approval from the legislature before purchasing or entering into a lease, license, or sublease of property owned by the federal government, foreign government, or sub-entities thereof for a term in excess of 5 years. And I ask that I be allowed to speak on this motion.
Please proceed.
Situs Masi. On March 31, the Attorney General of Guam issued a review of the proposed medical campus lease. According to the review, the lease provides numerous legal problems that preclude the AG's approval in its present form, and therefore the Attorney General was unable to sign the lease. The legal issues with the lease were that it was non-compliant with federal and local laws and not involving the Guam Legislature in authorizing and appropriating funds for the lease. He also said the lease for Guam's hospital medical campus precludes access by the people of Guam. Those were the main legal issues, and he wrote several pages of description as to these legal issues. He also made 3 recommendations. One, and I just want to point out that each one of these recommendations he includes secure legislative approval or obtain legislative approval. Number one, secure legislative approval for the lease is drafted and remove the in-kind agreement which was not attached for review, and complete attachment B which was not completed, or complete the in-kind agreement attachment F and design for the hospital and medical campus facilities attachment B which were not included, and obtain legislative approval. So one or two, and number three, remove the takeover provisions in 15.23 and obtain legislative approval, or include the takeover provision in 15.3 and obtain legislative approval. As you know, on April 17, 2023, I extended an invitation to the governor and lieutenant governor to share their plans regarding the proposed lease for the medical campus in consideration of the Attorney General's legal determination. In a public hearing format on Tuesday, April 25 at 9 a.m. In my invitation, I stated that this was another good faith attempt to follow through with the legislature's commitment to assist in the building of a new hospital. Neither of them showed. They said they had no new details. They reminded me about the task force meeting that I attended, and that then I stopped attending. What they didn't say is that they stopped giving us notice of the task force meetings. In fact, I think they continued to have other meetings, obviously not in compliance with the open government law, which was the whole nexus of Bill 13, was to make those meetings open for the people of Guam and so that we would know exactly what was being transpired on behalf of us. It is unfortunate that the governor or the lieutenant governor did not attend in an effort to work with the legislature, even after the Attorney General confirmed that entering into this lease would financially obligate the people of Guam for generations to come and requires legislative approval. Furthermore, Attorney Moylan, during that hearing on Tuesday, noted that should the governor decide to pursue this unenforceable lease instead of working with the legislature, we will see ourselves in another GRRP type situation, where the Supreme Court of Guam, after years of litigation, confirmed in 2008 that the agreement between the government of Guam and GRRP was unenforceable. I think it was more than a decade that was in litigation, and that the contract was illegal as a matter of law because it obligated the government of Guam without legislative approval. As you know, what has transpired since our hearing on Tuesday or overnight was that we've received another draft of a lease that between the governor and the military. And in this draft, colleagues, it's very different. Now, it's very blatant. It says, the government of Guam shall pay to the U.S. government fair market value rent, the amount of which has been determined by the Secretary of the Navy as $9.136 million for the first 10 years of the lease, to be paid within 10 days of execution of the lease from funds available to and or within the control of the Office of the Governor of Guam without further legislative appropriation. Thereafter, the Secretary of the Navy has determined that the military utility of the hospital and medical campus facilities by the Department of Defense for Department of Defense mission purposes, including the benefit of U.S. military service members and dependents, and or agreed upon services and or facilities constructed and available for the U.S. government use as conditions of this lease provides the requisite remaining consideration for the lease. In other words, yes, you need to pay $9 million in advance from the funds that you, Governor, have, and commit the people of Guam to provide services in this hospital as described and prescribed, but not contained herein, by the military. And this obligation to provide services and operate a hospital are exactly what we talked about at the hearing with the Attorney General, where we described that, sure, maybe we can use ARP funds and she can not have to get legislative approval for ARP funds. That's $10 million out of a $1 billion proposed project. That's a prepaid rental amount of $10 million that doesn't include at all what it costs to actually operate a hospital, let alone construct it. We've been told it's going to take us $1 billion to construct it. No one's talked about the cost of the operations, which we know from running GMH, it's our nurses we're going to pay. We are trying to attract specialists. We are going to cover those costs. There's nothing in the military giving us their populations to serve and paying their bills that's going to help us reimburse our costs for the construction or help us to cover the costs that we, the government of Guam, will always incur, and that includes covering our indigent populations, paying over and above what might be on the market for specialists, our nurses, and all of the other services that we are going to provide for the people of Guam, no matter what. And the lease. And the Attorney General made it very clear in his written memorandum regarding the first draft of the lease that the Guam 21st Century Healthcare Center Act of 2021, where the legislature appropriated $35 million a year for the hospital to be built on government property, does not apply to these leases with the military for the use of military land. He made that very clear. It's on page 8. And he says the act clearly provides that the lease-to-own option was to be constructed upon government of Guam real property. The lease provides for use of federal lands and the return of federal lands in 50 to 75 years, along with the structures that will have been constructed by Guam's taxpayers. The act further contains a statement that the hospital would be built upon the act, meaning the law that we passed, appropriating the 35 for a hospital, would be built upon GovGuam property, and this would be the manner in which the hospital would be constructed, especially when one considers that the Guam Legislature would need to fund any other hospital facility. And he goes on. So I'm asking my colleagues to look at that if you are not convinced and you think that we've already appropriated money to build a hospital on land that we do not own. The absence of a local statute regarding federally owned property risk incurring an obligation without any public input and counteracts a transparent and consistent policy. Bill 12 is trying to remedy that, trying to remedy all this and all future situations where one person in the government is trying to incur an obligation for all of the people of Guam without any public input and without transparency and without consistency. This legislature, and more importantly, the people of Guam, continue to have no access to the full terms of this lease for federal lands, and the governor is adamant on signing it despite the clear recommendations by the Attorney General. In fact, this draft of the lease doesn't even include a signature line for the Attorney General of Guam, maybe in an attempt to completely bypass all other existing laws. But I'm asking you that we implement this law. And all it will do is require that good faith discussion that we have been asking for. It's up to us. We are the people's last resort. They're looking to us to safeguard the interests of them and ensure that contracts negotiated and entered into on their behalf that will obligate tax dollars and that of future generations' tax dollars are made public and transparent by mandating this in law. Colleagues, let's not be the legislature that future generations will look at and say, why did they accept trinkets? The military paying again or allowing us to use land for $9 million is not going to compensate us for the true cost of this hospital. It's a blatant attempt to avoid disclosure of the terms and avoid discussion of the obligations. And even if you love this governor, which I do, and you love this deal, which I don't, or you're willing to ignore the unwritten parts of the deal that are not before us at all, should we ignore the fact that the deal could be any terms? That if we allow this one, we are setting a precedent as a legislature to allow any deal between a governor and a federal agency for any terms, behind our backs, behind the people's backs. Ignoring this now and failing to override this after what has transpired, after they have refused to come down and talk to us in good faith, and they have sent another lease where they might even be precluding the Attorney General's review or approval. Would really be a disservice, that's an understatement, to the people of Guam, to all the original landowners who continue to hope that the property excess lands will be returned to the government of Guam, and that what I really fear is that we as a legislature will be acquiescing to this one admiral who's supposed to leave in June, and that's what they say in the media, his one assertion that they are done with their obligation for net negative and the return of excess land. I implore you, colleagues, to put whatever differences we have aside. This is an issue bigger than any of us. It's an issue that brings our entire history to bear before us. Do not acquiesce to them saying they are done with return of excess federal lands. They are done with their promises to us. Well, we carried a huge burden for them. Do not acquiesce. We are a legislature, and we are here for one purpose, that is checks and balances of even governors that we love. It is bigger than us. Whether we're going to obligate the people of Guam to billions of dollars without them having a look or a say, without us, a legislature, not even me, but future legislatures having a say. Do not acquiesce. Do not set that precedent. We can assure a look at these deals by overriding Bill 12. And that's all it will do. It will require them to come down here for approval. And I pledge my reasonableness that if the deal is good, I'm all for it because I want a hospital. Just make it reasonable. And let's safeguard the interests of our people. That's our job. Situs Masi, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Speaker Terlahi. On the motion, Senator Duenas, followed by Senator Titlegy. Senator Duenas.
Situs Masi, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker. I certainly rise in full support of the override of Bill 1237. And I guess I could go over all of the excellent points that the Attorney General made, but our good speaker handled that. And in her discussion, talking about the fact that this new lease that has been transmitted to the Attorney General, I have to say, without the signature block of the Attorney General, what an insult. What's the point in sending the lease for review once again by the Attorney General and omitting his signature block? You know, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General, when he was gracious enough to spend time with us the other day and go over the reasons why he could not sign the lease, made it clear that without the Attorney General's approval, without that signature block being signed, he couldn't even imagine, and without the legislature's participation, he couldn't even imagine how any bondholders, on how any financial institution would even consider providing for the financing. It's wrought with implications and lawsuits to abound. But Madam Speaker, that's not the thing that really ticks me off the most. What bothers me here is now we're here once again. We're here once again after the Attorney General made it clear, and I say this to my colleagues with all due respect, we cannot ever have a more clear declaration by the Attorney General of Guam saying, you do not proceed with contracts obligating the people of Guam to billions of dollars without legislative approval. But that's not what ticks me off the most. What ticks me off the most is we're here because of timelines. Timelines. We were given a drop-dead date of the 14th, came and gone. And now I guess the gun is to our head again for the 30th. Who are we to operate on timelines given by what some people are now saying is the second branch of government? I have the greatest deal of respect for our military. I have the greatest deal of respect for this buildup. I've been behind it and I've supported it since the beginning. I have equal respect for both of those flags that are right behind you, Madam Chair. But we must not go backwards and be insulted by being strong-armed and given timelines. And you know what gives me confidence? And I pray that we get this override, Madam Chair. What gives me confidence is this body will speak and say the timeline is when we operate like a democracy, where we have co-equal branches of government, where the timeline is the people of Guam will get to see every word, every page, every letter written in this lease. Because themselves, their children, their grandchildren, and possibly their grandchildren's children will be obligated to this multi-billion-dollar endeavor. If there's one thing we say today, Madam Speaker, and speak as a body, is we will not force the people of Guam to act on anybody else's timeline except our own. And when commitments were made under the 4 pillars, and we understand that the Indo-Pacific is a hot spot right now, we get it. But when agreements are to be taken back, just say it. I've said from the beginning, Madam Chair, the problem with this whole situation and why we're here right now is this entire endeavor for over 2 years now, for over 2 years, has been done in bad faith, in secret, behind closed doors, even to the point of bringing original landowners down to the governor's office, trying to feed them the opportunity to have hope of financial redress. And they were clear what they said. No. Even if we end up not getting it back, we want to fight and we want to die for that fight. Just bad faith across the board. But as I close, Madam Speaker, the 2 worst things, as the Speaker said, that we can set as a precedent today is to acquiesce and give up our power and our authority because, Madam Chair, you know, even when you see these financial deals, this Sam Bankman-Fried, and you see these things on Wall Street, and they even have shows about greed of Wall Street, every single time you find out, in the end, when those deals fall through and those people take money and use it for nefarious reasons and steal, you know what's always found out? Lack of internal controls, lack of oversight, lack of control. Markets have crashed because of that. And they always go back and they take a look and they find out who was watching the watcher. That's what we have to do here. We have to watch the watcher. And if we don't do that, we've given up the people's voice. Because we are only here as their representatives. We're not here for us. We're here because they put us here. And as the Speaker said, if it's such a great deal, then show the people of Guam. But there's 2 things we cannot do today. And I pray there's 2 things we won't do today. We won't acquiesce the people's power and authority. And we will not act on anybody's timeline. We will act on the timeline of the people of Guam. And we will make sure, just like the folks that have taken the time to come out behind us, and every other Samoru, Guamanian, and people of Guam have their voice heard right in this hall. I beg and I pray that this body speaks loud and clear today. The people will be heard. We will not accept anybody's timeline. There's only one deity, entity, and omnipotent power that sets a timeline, and that's God. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Thank you. Colleagues and visitors in the balcony, we ask that you please keep decorum in the session hall. Senator Teichel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to stand up once again, and I will continue to stand up every single time this bill comes up for an override, or even future bills that will bring transparency and accountability. But let's hope this time, because we're on a short timeline here, that this override is voted by 10 people. 10 people who believe in transparency, who believe in accountability, but most especially, Madam Speaker, who believe in the people of Guam and their children and their grandchildren and the future that's going to bind them to this cost. But let's make it completely clear. By voting on this override doesn't stop the building of a new hospital. It doesn't stop it. In fact, Madam Speaker, we can probably build a hospital a lot sooner than the 4 to 5 years it's going to take to build one. To build, I call this Taj Mahal, because when we need a new hospital with more beds, and that's really what we need. Do we really need to attach a public health building? Do we really need to attach a Guam Behavioral Wellness Center? Because that's well over $1 billion. What is our main goal here? For all of us, to build a new hospital and to do it right and transparent. If we can't get 10 votes, the people of Guam will speak in the next election. Because even though they want to be here today, even though we get these emails that I can't be there today, but please stand up for the people of Guam. This is the right thing to do to override this bill. Last time I checked, you guys, we were here for the people of Guam. Not one individual who wants to dictate the whole process of a new hospital because it's her way or the highway. And if she doesn't get it, well, she'll manipulate the system, which is happening on this second lease agreement. Behind closed doors, without the Attorney General who represents, and even in that public hearing, he says, I represent the people of Guam. I was elected by the people of Guam. This whole lease that's coming up and all what's in the lease, doesn't it make you feel like you're a second-class citizen? I feel like I'm a second-class citizen, not just by the military, but our own governor has made us feel like we're a second-class citizen, that our comments, our people's voices don't matter. We need the vote of 10. 10 people who have the courage, 10 senators who know that if we don't get involved and ensure the security of a viable hospital, and one that we all can feel comfortable moving forward, because I don't know about you, but we're not going to be here forever. The time is now. April 30th is coming up. And I wouldn't be surprised if she's signing that document right now, Madam Speaker, because of the comments that are being made today, because of the support we have in the session hall. Don't make us feel like second-class citizens. Don't make our people of Guam feel like they're second-class citizens, that they don't deserve to do this the right way. Just because somebody's sitting up there in the perch saying, do it my way or the highway, I don't care. I'm gonna do it my way. Did you hear that? I did it pretty good, didn't I? That's because I constantly hear that all the time. Constantly. This is a democracy, not a dictatorship. Let's remind each other what happened during the pandemic. How we had to remind this individual what road she was going down. Please, my colleagues, remember why you were voted in. Remember the people you represent, and even long after you're gone, they will remember your courage and that you had the best interest in our people and our beautiful, beautiful island. Let's not destroy that. I humbly ask my colleagues, please. This does not stop the hospital from building up if you vote yes on this override. It doesn't. It may even speed the process up, but most importantly is we got a current hospital that's falling apart now. Our sick cannot wait for another 4 years or 5 years to be seen. So stop the shenanigans, please. Let's do this right. Do it for the people that voted you in. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chaidagui. On the motion, Senator Brown, followed by Senator Sinicla. Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You know, I don't even know where to begin because it's kind of frustrating, obviously, from our end to find out that some key policy issues from the administration, you know, we read about it in the news. And then the other day I was asked by someone, who is the governor's liaison to the Guam Legislature? And I thought, gosh, I have no idea. I asked my other colleagues and they had no idea either. And I think that shows you the state of the relationship, or the lack thereof, shall I say the lack thereof, between our offices here in the legislature and the governor of Guam. It kind of reminds me, because, you know, it's some of the advantages of being around a long time, you're part of history. And I recall my first round in the Guam legislature, I spent many years holding up the walls against, you know, someone who was my political godfather, the Honorable Carl T.C. Gutierrez, who was governor of Guam, who I politically and he politically had many different views about how to operate our government. And I spent most of that term side by side with then Senator Leon Guerrero, Leon Guerrero, holding up the walls because we didn't agree with the direction in many cases. So much so, Madam Speaker, for those of you that recall, there was a resolution that was introduced in the Guam legislature to recall the governor of Guam. And there was a lot of debate, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration in the community. And when the time came down for the vote, I voted for that resolution. I bet if we check back the record, probably Governor Leon Guerrero as a senator voted for that resolution. But I will tell you that the members, including some on my own side of the aisle, some that were extremely high vote getters, their numbers were so high they were single digits, voted against that resolution. And I also recall that except for one member of that body that ran for re-election, everyone else that voted against that resolution did not get elected. They did not get re-elected. And the only one that survived because that individual happened to be who they were. If they had been anyone else, they probably also would not have gotten re-elected. But the challenge of that time in our history was the fact that we very much felt the governor wanted to run the government his way, irrelevant of the legislature or anyone else. And that built up a lot of frustration of our people. So much so that even colleagues that I consulted saying, you know what? Our people have a lot of frustration. And if we don't direct this where it should go, it's going to come back on us. It's going to harm us. And sure enough, I don't know if it's a danger of being up at Adelup. I've worked for 2 governors in my time. When we get too removed from our people and what they expect of us, because we should never forget. I don't know, when you're young, and I had my day. I was a senator when I was in my 20s. You're like, wow, look at me, I got elected. I must be something special. But we can't lose sight of what our role and our responsibility is here is to represent the interests of our people, not our own. We're not here to use and abuse our authority for our benefit or for what we want. We're here to ensure that we represent the interests and the needs of our people. How do we obligate our people to a $1 billion obligation of which they do not know nor are they engaged with? Not so much even us, our children and our grandchildren. Power is becoming very isolated at Adelup. We find out about Adelup reading in the newspaper or listening to the radio or watching the evening news. That's how disengaged Adelup is from the rest of the leadership here on Guam. You cannot take the power of the people and then spit it back at them tell them, oh, I'm in charge. That's the most offensive thing you can possibly do. I've often said the reason I ran again is because I'm here to want to ensure check and balance, irrelevant of who's on the Hill. That is our job, that is our obligation, that is our responsibility to the people that we go out to every other year and say, Manaluhuds and Maninahu Tautau Guam. Vote for me because I am here to represent you. But then when we get the people's power, what do we do with it? All of a sudden, they're supposed to be at our mercy? There is no quick solution to this issue. If the governor is persistent on wanting to move ahead with her agreement with the military, I think we're going to end up in a legal battle. And there's nothing productive with that. It is only going to create more negative energy that's not going to be positive and productive for our people. I have to tell you, having been around a long time, I am dumbfounded that we would even acquiesce to such an agreement. And I myself, who grew up in a military family, I remember I used to have my ID card. I'm a military dependent. But I also look at the jurisdiction of the military, and they have their jurisdiction. And the people of Guam have their jurisdiction. We came from a military government. And all our leaders since then have always moved towards the independence of our people to run their own island and run their own government. And now in the construction of a new hospital, the governor has decided in her meetings with the admiral how they want the hospital to be, not how our people want, as if we have the luxury of accommodating all the additional demands and requests of military. Can you imagine? The governor's going to spend almost $10 million of money that could go towards the existing hospital to address the issues now or other needs in our community that our people need, but she's going to pay that to the federal government so that she can use federal property? Of all the property in Guam, we've got to go and use federal property that was taken from our people to begin with? It's so contrary to the whole history of everything that everyone before us, the great titans of our government that have stood in this hall and served in this hall. It's so contrary to everything they have stood and represented. And all of a sudden now, because we want it our way, as my colleague Senator Tello, I don't know if I can impersonate her as well, and speaking like the governor, I can say half a day. That's probably all I can do. But that's just unimaginable. And now we're saying we're going to do it come hell or high water. Well, good luck. That does not do anything to provide support. I mean, even the other day, all of a sudden, of all the days of the week, she's just not here to talk to us. I mean, God forbid the governor of Guam would grace us with her presence. I don't know, Governor Calvo did it. Governor Gutierrez did it. Gosh, he came down to one of my public hearings to help poor Gisho and Hara out. to defend Gil Shanahan on a signature that I was questioning because I've seen Carl Gutierrez. You know, so is that Carl Gutierrez' signature? Sure, Gov, that's your signature. It doesn't look like your handwriting. But even Carl Gutierrez would come down and meet us and let us know his thoughts. And I appreciate that. We don't agree, but I'll tell you, I appreciate the fact that he'll come out and say what he's got to say. It's good. We can talk about it. You know, we can have a conversation. But what is happening now is an abuse of power. And all we hear is, this is my organic this and my organic that. What does that have to do with serving the public? What does that have to do with accounting of the public's resources and the public purse? Especially someone who, like I said, I served with. Anyone else here served with her? No, I served with her. And to see this now, we can't even pay for what we have now, my dear colleagues. And in the weeks ahead, for all of you that voted more recently, for all these additional obligations you put on the people of Guam's back, there's going to be a lot of things when we get into the details of this upcoming fiscal year budget. All of a sudden, the money's not going to be there. Dollars to donuts. The money's not going to be there for a whole bunch of things. And now as time goes on, we're finding how critical operations in this government are failing. DOC's one, DOE's another. The list shall go on, and the more we dig, the more we're going to not want to know, but there it is. It's going to be staring us in the face. And yet, the governor wants to push through with this agreement. It's just astounding, because it's so contrary to everything that everyone up until this point has been working towards. Why would we want to do that? Why do we want to go and build a hospital facility on federal property that was taken by and from our people? Why do we want to pay the federal government $10 million to do that? When we have land we can build a hospital complex on that will meet the needs of our people and our community. And why would we want to do this in the dark? With the military, who has far more resources to expand their existing capability because they didn't plan or prepare? Gotta wonder. I sat there up on the hill at Nimitz Hill when we were told, oh, we're gonna mothball this, and we're gonna mothball that, and this is a strategic situation of the region, and yeah, we don't need all these operations on Guam. And look at, here we are, 15 years later, and all of a sudden, the whole geopolitical layout has changed. Nobody saw China. Nobody was looking at North Korea. Our position on the map is exactly the same spot, hasn't changed. And all of a sudden now they don't have the capacity. And now they want that to be borne on the backs of the people of Guam. And I have to say no. I don't mind providing assistance. I got a family member who's a military dependent. By all means, if they need health care, I would want them to get the health care that they need. And if it needs to be partnered in specialties out in our community or our hospital that we have, that's no problem. If there's the capacity to do it, by all means. But that's not our priority. We can barely properly operate the hospital we have now. We can barely meet the financial demands of the hospital that we have now. We can't even maintain the hospital that we have now. But somehow we're going to carry that additional burden of the military demands and what their needs are when they so simply and easily have access to the resources to supply far more than what we can even do. So you got to wonder. You got to wonder why we are on this path, because this is a path that does not have a good outcome. And I don't want us to spend time in litigation. You know, that whole issue of the gosh, I know about GRRP. I was one of the first senators to raise the issue about GRRP's contract on the incinerator. My good colleague across the aisle, Defuntu Ben Pangilinan. Ben and I disagreed on a lot of things, but one of the things we agreed on was that contract. And we worked on it together to fight that issue. And here we are 28 years later. Yeah, look how long that's still popping up. 28 years later. Thank goodness the court ruled in the favor of the people to not obligate us to a contract that was not in our people's best interests, because certain parties wanted to make money on the backs of our people that was totally unneeded and unnecessary. Because, you know, the backroom deals, the connections, yeah, we know about all that. I don't want to see us end up in that. There's no reason for it. There's no reason that these key issues involving our people's money and our people's future, including the construction of a new hospital, cannot be done in the light of day. And if the governor thinks she's so above us all, that she's the sole authority on Guam to do what she wants to do, good luck to her. Good luck to her, because all she's doing is engendering more anger and more frustration, not just by us. Ultimately, it will be our people to decide. You know, it's always the danger of power. That's why you got to handle it very humbly. I'll tell you, the most humble I've ever been is right here in this position. You have to be. You have to be humble. You have to be careful with the power, the temporary power that you're granted to help our people. To not abuse that, because trust me, if you do, you will not be remembered well, assuming you survive it politically. But I think the governor needs to pause, because you know what? The people still get to decide. The people don't necessarily have to put up with this for another 3.5 years. They may decide otherwise. When you abuse the authority that's been granted to you, there will be a price to pay. Please, yes, Adelup, all you staffers out there that are watching, by all means, relay that message. Everything is temporary, and this administration will end, as all administrations end, and the power will transfer elsewhere. But to continue to go down this road is unproductive. To defy and say, I'm not going to deal with the legislature, I don't care with the attorney general, I don't care with anyone, I'm going to go do what I want to do. And the people be damned. Well, let's see where that chapter goes, because I very much am in support of this override. I hope my colleagues, because everyone, we all got to meet our people every day. They're right out there looking at us everywhere we go. I hope you vote for your people and vote for this override and ensure public accountability with the expenditure of their money and their resources and their future and their health care. So with that, Madam Speaker, I fully rise in support of this override, and thank you for the opportunity to provide my comments.
Thank you. On the override, Senator San Nicolas, you are recognized, followed by Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the override, but let me explain why. My approach has always been to find a middle way, to bridge the differences, strike a compromise, and heal divisions, not grand posturing, not playing cultural or identity politics, not dividing and polarizing our people. I think we can all agree we want a new hospital. I took the time to talk to some doctors over the past couple weeks, also some constituents, and you know, I like the big grand hospital that they're envisioning for Eagles Field, but doctors come to me and talk to me and try to make sense of that proposal, and some of them say, oh, the economic engines, they all reside in Tamuning. Why don't we just rebuild the hospital where it stands, or perhaps maybe at the old site, which is really interesting. Some of them say that the reason why the hospital beds or occupancy is full is not because there's a lack of hospital beds, but because there is a lack of people to run and man the wings and the hospital beds. So we need to find the truth. And I enjoy the people's trust and confidence. And whenever I'm going to do something, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. And I'm pretty sure everybody here, and I'm sure of it, everybody wants a hospital. But we must strike a compromise. We must try to heal our divisions and build a hospital that everybody's waiting for, whether it be at Eagles Field or the old hospital site or maybe just rebuilding GMH. But we have to strike a compromise and find a way to do it right and just. Because I'm very thankful for the trust and the confidence of the people. They can always count on me to do what is right, and therefore, I feel that the right thing to do is to override the veto. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Colleagues and guests, please. Senator Lujan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in full support of the override of the governor's veto. I thank my colleague, Senator Duane. Thank you very much for that. You know, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General came down here a couple of days ago and spoke to us, and basically he said, this hospital is not a civilian hospital, it's a military hospital. And the wording and the contract, the way it's written, and even now, even in the supposedly the new contents of the new backdoor without daylight agreement, even more so, it's stated that it's not a civilian hospital. And I did ask him, I said, so in your assessment, Mr. General Moylan, in your assessment, is this ours until it's theirs? I said, absolutely. It's ours until it's theirs. And we're building it. And remember a few years ago, actually, my colleague, Senator Brown, had mentioned this already. But a few years ago, the military built out the Naval Hospital. And I remember I was in the legislature before, we asked them, please don't knock down the old hospital. Let's use it for at least the veterans and all that and just build onto it. No, they knocked it down. They built a smaller hospital. We knew, again, as Senator Brown has said, we've always been here. We knew China was right there. We knew North Korea was right there. We always knew we were the tip of the spear. We grew up knowing that. Nothing has changed. But the military has admitted that they underbuilt that hospital. And now they realized, and maybe because they just graduated from Annapolis, they just realized that, oh my gosh, we need a hospital because there might be conflict. And it just so happened that, you know, the governor of Guam wants to build a hospital too, but we need it. But you know what? Let's make it look like it's theirs. We'll pretend we give them back their land to build this hospital that we really need. We'll put a helicopter pad, the helipad, for, our helicopter that's going to land there. I'll find a helicopter. Do we have a law enforcement here that have helicopters? How's that? Who is it built for? It's not built for us. It's definitely not built for us. It's ours until it's theirs. And we're going to pay for it. We're going to give you back the land that we took from you. We're going to give you back, and you're going to build a hospital. You're going to build it in our specs, and you're going to pay for it. And you can use it until we want to take it back. Wow. Skullduggery. We don't need to look at who is going to do us in. We just need to look in the mirror that our own government is going to do us in. If we continue down this road. If I were to ask, if my grandmother was still alive and I were to ask, Afamon, Nana? Afamon, tabalo be botas di? Afamon? Nana will say, boy, sus, kotuntungo manaitay, umisguaw ni tutungo for English o koprendi, afam masasagan. Kung fababan maisawa, pon botay na. Again, we're going to do ourselves in if we don't override this veto. It's very obvious, again, what this is needed for. We all want a hospital. The governor had said there have been no proposals. There have been proposals since day one. I, for one, even before the campaign started, I said, hey, we need a new hospital, but you know what? Why don't we partner up with GRMC? Let's do a public-private partnership. The infrastructure is already there. They have more rooms than beds as well. And again, what they're saying about, it's not about the bed capacity, it's about staffing. It's about staffing. And building the hospital, either you build it on the site or right there where the old hospital used to be. What is so wrong with that? Not big enough? I mean, the way the old hospital was built out, it was pretty long. You can build up. All of a sudden, it's not big enough. And whose standards is it not big enough for? It was good enough then. It served the people of Guam. And now it cannot serve the people of Guam. We have to go somewhere else where it's not feasible, where all the doctors said it's not conducive over there. It's just not going to work. And if you want to save lives, there's a lot further to go. When you have seconds, minutes to be able to get to a trauma center. If this deal was so good, and maulik is na kontrata, after ti man malago mafatnuit, after ti malago mamatugini esti na igumaitauto, pero fanuit. You know, about over a month ago, we asked the governor, Governor, can you proclaim a state of emergency for DOE? Oh, no, it's not. I can't do that. It's on the shoulders of the legislature. Okay, so we did. Reacted. Now, in such an important thing with the hospital, now it's all you. Without the help or input of the legislature? We've been asking to proclaim a state of emergency in the drug situation we have here in Guam. Nothing yet. But when we're reading this and the secret negotiation that's going on, I'm wondering, there wasn't a state of emergency proclaimed, but when the hell was martial law proclaimed? When was it proclaimed? Because these actions, again, are not indicative of a democracy. These actions are definitely just giving us two fingers to this house. Like what the Chinese carrier is doing right now, or was doing, just off the coast, just showing us the finger. This is far from the democracy, the founding of our democracy. This is being done, I can't say smoke-filled rooms, but maybe the lights were turned off when this happened. Because how the heck can you read an agreement that's totally against you and put it in the backs of the people of Guam, that's not yours, and you're going to agree with it. And you're going to say, this is good for Guam. This is good for Guam. Well, if it is good for Guam, why can't we see it? Why can't we see it? And just, again, a couple of days ago, we called the governor down to meet with us and show us this good deal. And she felt she didn't have to. But she's now saying, well, I've got an even better deal. Really? It's not no was that boy, worse, you know? Worse, you know, na deal. Colleagues, again, please, it's incumbent on us to do the right thing for our people. I ask each and every one of you, and this is not a matter of you have to be loyal to somebody. Yes, be loyal to your people and be loyal to your God. And do the right thing. Because this agreement is not the right thing. This is wrong. It is bad. It is detrimental to our island. We need a hospital, but this lease is bad. If I was sitting with the Admiral and he gave me this piece of paper to read it, first thing I would say, what part of stupid do you think I am? I'll say, give it back to you. Stupid no, kinigual. So again, colleagues, I just implore you, please, dig down in your hearts and soul. Do this for Guam. We need to move on, yes, and build a hospital. That is what is needed. But this particular lease is not the right way to do it. It's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it as well is when everybody gets together, come down here, and be transparent with us. You know, one other thing I'm going to say is, it can't all be done without us. You got to remember the manning of that hospital are going to be government employees. Who approves the hospital's budget? The Admiral? Really? So these are all the things, these are the concerns, of course, of the AG, and our concerns as well. So once again, colleagues, as I close, I ask that you override the governor's veto. This is not against the governor. This is against a bad deal. This is against a bad deal. And let's move from this to a good deal for the people of Guam. With that, again, Madam Speaker, I rise in full support, and I ask my colleagues again to do as well and override the governor's veto. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. On the veto, override of the veto. Senator Fisher, colleagues and guests in attendance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be brief. I think this morning we're talking about two things that need to be built. One of them, of course, is the hospital, and I'm confident that the hospital will be built, and the hospital will be built with the input of the people of Guam through their legislators in session. I'm confident that will happen, and I'm confident that we will have full participation in it. The other thing that needs to be built, and I don't no pleasure in this, but I think it's the governor's credibility that needs to be rebuilt. On the 24th of April, prior to that, she had been invited to come speak to us. And she responded in a letter, and this was over her signature. She said, regrettably, open quotes, regrettably, I will be off island at the designated time of your hearing, and in any event, there are no new details to share regarding the Eagles Field lease at this time. That was on the 24th of April. On the 26th of April, a brand new lease was produced. When the governor, if it was her that signed it and not an auto pen, when she did sign it, she was making a material misrepresentation to the legislature. This is a classic example of an unforced error. It's remarkable that anyone let that letter leave her desk. She also said in the letter, I have been very open with you and invited you, referring to Speaker Therese, to participate in the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority Task Force since its inception. We know this is untrue since Speaker Therese was unaware of the existence of the second lease. Again, somebody in Adelup who drafted this letter has treated us, and I will not attribute this to Governor Leon Guerrero, but somebody is treating us with contempt. And it is an unforced error for her to have allowed this to go out over her signature. We need to put this behind us. We have 3 more years to go. We need to work together, and we have a right to rely on truthfulness from the executive branch. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. On the override, Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in full support of this override. I think with the obligation of the funds from our people, it's even more necessary to increase transparency into this $1 billion complex. It was made very clear by the Attorney General that it is inorganic to go forward with this project without it. And I think it's clearly, when looking at some of the documents that have been sent to us recently, and not all of it has been sent to us, by the way, it's a bad deal. This lease is a bad deal for the people of Guam. It doesn't have the best interest of the people of Guam, for many reasons stated by my colleagues. And I think I also want to point out that, we need to refer these lands, before they were called military control lands, they were Native people's lands. And to have to resign, to give up this right to return these lands to the Native owners is really going in the wrong direction of what we need to be doing as a people. If I can quote Angel Santos, he said, generations come, generations will pass, but if no generation has the courage, the conscience, and the conviction to right the wrongdoings of the past, then the next generation will have to live with the same injustice in the future. We stand in these halls where we had many of these brave Chamorro leaders, and it's important that we continue the progress today that they have made. And I ask my colleagues to continue this long, long fight to bring justice to our people. Back in the day, these lands were taken from Chamorros who did not speak English in the way that they can understand, that they needed to understand these agreements. They were taken from us. These lands were taken from us. It is our duty to restore justice to our people. Building this hospital without the people's consent is adding on to this injustice. We could talk about the cost. It will increase the cost, the infrastructure cost, and we could talk about the contamination. It was very clear the land is contaminated. When I saw the first lease, it was our government that was supposed to clean it up. With this lease now, it's clear that the federal government, that was one change. But still, this land belongs to the people here of Itatatano. Let us not ignore this injustice. When we talk about a hospital, we talk about healing. Healing is not just about being placed in a facility to treat a disease. Healing is about restoring our well-being, undoing the traumas of the past. If we move forward with this hospital in this particular plot, it would undo so much progress towards healing of our people. And this is what our people are crying out for. There are so many reasons not to put this hospital here. So many reasons. And why is it being ignored? Why? That is the question we have not answered it yet. I don't see a clear answer. So I ask for my colleagues for their support for this override to restore the well-being of our people, to restore our people's rights, to restore justice. Seduus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Perez. On the override of the governor's veto of Bill number 12, Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, before I stood here, a couple seconds before I got up, I had to turn to my colleague and I said, isn't this bill about the lease? Okay, and about the length of time? And I bring that up because, Madam Chair, I got to start with this, what our fundamental duties are. We're elected to a body that, according to our democracy, of which we work under the guise of 3 branches of government. We work in a democracy and in a branch that is tasked, and it is the responsibility in behalf of the people it serves to ensure that the people's money is spent properly and the people's voices are heard. I'm going to get back to that in a little bit. And to start our responsibility in this branch of government that we work in, we take an oath to basically defend and support the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the United States applicable to Guam, and the laws of Guam. And our duty is grounded in those laws. In that it is our responsibility to look into matters and to help to decide on matters that will affect the community now and in the future. It is our responsibility to engage in discussions and deliberations in behalf of the people that we serve. It is our responsibility to be the check and balances of an executive branch, to ensure that democracy continues to thrive in our community. Because absent democracy is anarchy, is autocracy. It's a government that is ruled by one person and one person alone. Despite what the community and the people that is governed by it, have to say. That's our job. And sometimes in our job, we tend to be a little confused as to what our policies and what our positions are going to be. Because while some opponents to this law, to this bill, would abhor that any lease agreement that is going to take in excess of 5 years should not occur without scrutiny by this body. But yet, when it comes to this bill, we're going to go ahead and abscond it. We're just going to go ahead and let it go. We're going to say, yeah, it's good, without any discussion. And I say without any discussion because, you know, it's kind of interesting. We find, first off, through a release from media sources that there was an existence of a lease agreement that has been worked on for the last 2 years with no discussion by this body that would obligate our community to, I don't know what the reports are. According to the media, it's going to cost over $2.something billion. And then fast forward to, I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I find out that there's a release, that there's another document. There's an amendment, or there's a second lease agreement. Without any discussion from us, because I have to agree with the good senator from Talofofo who brings up that, you know, based on assurances and based on what we did get from the governor, is that there was no progress to report in what we were going to presume and perceive to be a second lease agreement. There was no progress to report on that. Only to find that there is one that now attempts to remove the legislature and remove the Attorney General from any participation. And we're going to be comfortable with that? We're going to be comfortable with a lease agreement that is going to, supposedly for a facility that is going to cost us in excess of $2 billion, and we're going to be comfortable with not having any participation in that? According to the news release that I saw earlier, is that one of the ways they're going to try to get around it is because they're going to use the ARP funding for it. Kind of interesting because sometime between that release and today, and as I speak, Congress has just passed a measure that puts that funding in jeopardy. There's a clawback provision in the budget before Congress, or in the spending plan before Congress, that is going to take back COVID-19 monies, ARP monies. If it is not intended, if not used in the intended purpose, for its intended purposes, in a certain period of time. So then what happens to that portion of the agreement? It's going to have to come back to us. You know, I'm kind of astounded that we have to stand here and we have to argue on a position that is inherently ours to begin with. It is our responsibility in the democracy that we live in the form of government that we live in, to participate, to question, to deliberate matters of which concern money that our people have entrusted us to manage. I can't put it any simpler than that. And when we have to stand here and argue a point that is our inherent and fiduciary responsibility to do, then what's next? Then what kind of a government do we live in? What kind of a democracy do we live in? This is not about personalities. This is not about tearing down ideas. This is about doing the job that we are expected to do. First and foremost, to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the United States applicable to Guam, and the laws of Guam. It is our duty to defend our people and their right and their voice. It is our duty to protect their interests, to fight for their interests, to fight for their rights. A vote against this override is a vote against everything that we promised the people of Guam that we were going to do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minority Leader. On the override of the veto of Bill 12, discussion on the override. Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This has been a long process for this hospital. And my biggest fear from the beginning is that with more bureaucracy leads to more setbacks, to more delays, to time we do not have to get a hospital. But what I really pride myself on most is being a team player. Everybody in this body says that they are looking to build a new hospital and that that's what they have in their hearts and what they want to achieve. And so, for once, I think I will, in the spirit of teamwork and cooperation, encourage this sentiment in my colleagues and take them at their word that this is what they want to achieve. And so, in the spirit of teamwork, I hope that we can work together in common fellowship to put a hospital together in as expeditious a manner with as little lawsuits as possible so that we could do it right the first time. And so with that, I'll keep my remarks short. Let's work together.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. On the override of vetoed Bill 12, discussion. Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd first like to welcome all of our youth counterparts for Island Leadership Day. Boy, you sure picked a great day to observe your island leaders at work. This is what this branch of government is all about, checks and balances. I'm just going to start at the beginning. Very encouraged by the debate and discussion on the floor. So far, really didn't know what to expect, and I know it's been heated at times, but I've always said, ever since the beginning, that I believe the deeper we get into this issue, the more our colleagues will see that it really is something that requires us to do our job. And again, the very basic principles of our job. Anytime you involve the people of Guam's money, it requires legislative review and approval. And this proposal involves a whole lot of the people of Guam's money. And for me, from the beginning, it has never been about politics. It's always been about policy. Politics is attacking people who don't agree with you. Politics is ignoring the facts that are assembled in front of you because you've already come to a conclusion that you want to come to. Policy is about doing our job as a separate but co-equal branch of government. And starting in the beginning, there was a point where the governor, lieutenant governor could have done the right thing, but instead they took a left. They took a left, Chalu. When the Secretary of the Navy had deemed this land at Laulu excess, the governor and lieutenant governor, instead of choosing to fight for its return to the rightful landowners, decided to take us down this road, this billion-dollar hospital complex road. You know, I understand what politics is. I understand that the truth is bent to accommodate an agenda. But, you know, even when you bend the truth, it's still the truth, right? But I'm just not comfortable with the lies. And I'm just going to call it like I see it. You can lie to me all day. You can lie to this body. But don't lie to the people of Guam. Bust them and dagi umbi. Don't lie to the people of Guam. And the reason why the wheels are coming off this billion-dollar hospital complex is because it was built on a foundation of falsehoods. It was built on lies, secrecy, darkness. We were told they were still thinking about it. Come to find out, they've been negotiating this lease. And can I just say, what terrible negotiators. Negotiate a lease for a hospital that we're told is a civilian hospital. But I think when you look through the documents the documents that we've been able to obtain, the documents that have come out from Adelup late at night, I think it's clear it's a military hospital, because a civilian hospital is not bound by the requirements of an admiral. A civilian hospital is not subject to deadlines. If you're building a civilian hospital, no one says you have 3 days to approve this deal. A civilian hospital doesn't require a landing pad for an Osprey. A civilian hospital doesn't require us to sign a lease that obligates the people of Guam. And we were told it was free. We were told it was free. Our good governor was in the media a couple weeks ago after the failed override attempt, and she stuck to her gun. She said, this is a free lease. With all due respect, Madam Governor, I beg to differ. How can it be a free lease when we are now finding out with this amended lease that we must pay $10 million up front? That doesn't sound very free to me. Doesn't sound very free at all. But we were told it was free. We were told just 48 hours ago that there were no new details to report. In good faith, we invited the governor, who is on a plane over in the States now. In good faith, we invited the acting governor. But they wrote us a letter. That's how we communicate nowadays. There's not a lot of face-to-face communication. We talk to each other through letters, through the media. We were told there were no new details. But lo and behold, there were a lot of new details. In fact, there were so many new details that we got a whole new lease late last night. We were told that there was a deadline. We were told that we had to meet this deadline. And if we didn't, the deal of a lifetime would evaporate and disappear. But then we were told that, oh no, that wasn't a deadline, there's another deadline. And now this amended lease has come out in the dead of night and been sent over to the Attorney General, who, again, I'll admit I haven't always been the biggest supporter of the Attorney General, but like us, he's just trying to do his job. In his letter that we all received a copy of here, he writes, because our review is requested by April 29, 2023, a mere 3 days from now, they're asking for a red line version to compare the lease, the amended lease, with the one that he reviewed previously on March 14th that didn't pass muster, that was so incomplete he couldn't do a thorough legal review. But the AG further writes, we understand that the Navy the Navy, in the form of the Admiral, is setting this rush deadline in 3 days. The AG writes, "We strongly suggest that the deadline be removed and that we as a people, we as a government, with processes designed to protect the public's interest, not be rushed, considering the importance and financial obligations of what is being negotiated." My guy, they're calling the Admiral Nicholson, the second branch of government. As again, he's waltzing around town, talking about deadlines. Hod Sie how, Admiral? Hod Sie how? Who are you? Gone are the days of the naval governor. That's why this fight is so critical. We lose this battle, we lose our island. We lose this battle, we lose our island. This is how it starts. It starts with us agreeing to lease a property that was stolen from us. If someone breaks into your house and steals your belongings, you don't turn around and buy them back from that person. You make demands. You fight for the return of what's rightfully yours. And although that ship may have sailed, who are we to shoulder the burden of building a military hospital? Because the military in all their might, the military in all their prowess, the military with their bottomless pit of funding is relying on the government of Guam to pick up where they fell short. Where they fell short in failing to forecast the looming threat of China. They fell short by building a 47-bed naval hospital. And now they come to our governor, who's proven she's more than willing to collude with them to push this deal through without scrutiny from duly elected representatives of the people of Guam. Lose this, lose the island. If this goes through, what's next? What other lease for what other properties will be proffered? How much land will be taken? How little land will be returned? One of the previous speakers said we're being treated like second-class citizens. If you know your history on this island, many leaders have stood up and fought for our right to stand up on our own because of our treatment as second-class citizens. And those were first-class leaders that I admire. Angit is watching us today. And as I said, the deeper we get into this issue, the more the details, what little details there are, come out, the more our colleagues are going to see that this really is not about politics. It's about policy. It's about us doing our job, and that's always been what this is about. Everybody wants a new hospital. The debate is today whether we want a new hospital for the military or whether we want a new hospital for the people of Guam. And I stand today to say that I want a new hospital for the people of Guam. I want to know how many beds. I want to know how many floors. I want to turn on the lights, and I want to have the governor, lieutenant governor, let's bring the admiral too. Come down to the people's house, and let's do this the way we should have done it from the beginning. All hands on deck. whole of government, working together, not my way or the highway. Not if you don't agree with me, you're anti-American, you're an obstructionist. We just don't agree because we want to do the right thing. And rushing us through this deal, it's perverted really, how far they are going to avoid involving this good body that was elected by the people of Guam. The people of Guam put us here to do a job. They believed in us. And that's why we deserve a seat at the table, not for ourselves, but for the people of Guam. We have an obligation to listen to our people, whether they're the average Jose and Josefa Cruz, or whether they're the doctors who oppose the building of this new hospital at this site. We have an obligation to listen to the people of Guam before we listen to the Admiral of the Navy. So I say, sound the kulu. Let it be known that today we stand for our island. We stand against making deals in the darkness. We stand against military rule of a free people. And I'm confident in the discussion that I've heard today that this override is going to go through. And although this has been one hell of a battle, it really is only the beginning. Then the real work starts. It's just unfortunate, tragic, that we have wasted years pushing for this deal with not just little input from the senators, tons of input from the people of Guam. I'm confident in my colleagues. They had the support of the people of Guam to come into this body. And remember, we unanimously supported this measure. And a lot of things have happened since then, to include a failed override attempt. But I lit a candle last night, and I said a prayer, not only to Santa Maria Kamalin, but to the Tautamotna, that we're going to do the right thing. So let's do it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. On the discussion for the override of vetoed bill number 12, Speaker Terlahi, you may close.
Thank you very much. I want to thank my colleagues from the bottom of my heart for their remarks today. Very inspiring and appropriate, I believe. And a real testament to their commitment to the people of Guam. And I want to thank the people of Guam, especially those who are here with us today, who've come to show their desire for Guam. And I want to end my closing with just, we're doing this because we believe the people of Guam are entitled to know what is being negotiated on their behalf, what they are going to be obligated to, especially when it comes to land agreements involving deals made with the federal government for the use of federal property that used to be original landowners' property. All of this at the cost of the people of Guam. And when, for whatever reason, the governor and lieutenant governor do not invite the legislature to those meetings to discuss the terms of these leases they are contemplating, don't come down here to discuss the terms at our invitation. Then override and implementation of this bill will help us reset and move forward with a secure process, a set process where all of us can get on the same page again and in urgency. And let all of us and all of our people focus on pouring all of our work and our efforts and our love for the people of Guam, and let's heal them with a new hospital, without lying to them, without hiding things from them, and without building on top of decades of injustice. Let's pour our love into that, into the healing. Thank you again, colleagues, and I urge your support. And I'd like to renew my motion, Madam Speaker, that the override of this be placed on the voting file.
On the motion to place the override of vetoed bill number 12 in the voting file, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Speaker Terlahi, you are recognized.
Thank you. Notwithstanding the rules, I'd like to make a motion that we move to the voting file immediately and vote on the override.
On the motion to move to the voting file immediately, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We will take a brief recess to prepare for the voting file. We are in recess.
Imini 37 na Legislature Guahan is back from recess. We are now on the voting file. Clerks, please read. Sorry. The question before us is, notwithstanding the objections of Imagahagan Guahan, shall vetoed bill number 12-37 COR be overridden? Clerks, please read the title of the bill.
Bill number 12-37 COR, as amended on the floor, introduced by Therese M. Terlahi, Frank Bloss Jr., Chris Barnett, Joanne Brown, Christopher M. Duenas, Thomas J. Fisher, Jesse A. Lujan, Tello T. Taigui, Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, Roy A. B. Kanata. An act to amend Section 60112 of Chapter 60, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated, relative to requiring prior approval from the legislature before purchasing or entering into a lease, license, or sublease of property owned by the federal government, foreign government, or sub-entities thereof for a term in excess of 5 years.
Roll call.
Senator Barnett. Senator Blas. Senator Barnett, aye. Senator Blas, aye. Senator Brown. Senator Brown, aye. Senator Duenas. Senator Duenas, aye. Senator Fisher. Senator Fisher, aye. Senator Lujan. Senator Lujan, aye. Vice Speaker Munoz Barnes.
Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to excuse members not present.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries.
Vice Speaker Munoz Barnes excused. Senator Parkinson. Senator Parkinson, aye. Senator Perez. Senator Perez, aye. Senator Kanata. Senator Kanata, aye. Senator San Augustine. Senator San Augustine, aye. Senator Sinicolas. Senator Sinicolas, aye. Senator Shelton. Senator Shelton, aye. Senator Taigui. Senator Taigui, aye. Speaker Terlahi. Speaker Terlahi, aye.
There are 14 ayes and one excused absence. Notwithstanding the objections of Imagahagan Guahan, vetoed bill number 12-37 COR is overridden. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move to recess session until 10 a.m. tomorrow. However, we will be back for our colleagues this afternoon at 2 p.m. for a mock session with our Island Leadership Day counterparts. Thank you very much.
Assiduous Masi, on the motion to recess till 10 a.m. tomorrow, is there any objection? We are recessed until 10 a.m. tomorrow.